Hello and welcome back to Crozet United Methodist Church and our Thursday evening Bible study. I'm Sarah, the pastor here, and we are going to be picking up with Daniel chapter 6. And so we invite you to keep going along with us, and we look forward to seeing what happens next to our namesake, Daniel. So we're going to jump right in to chapter 6. And if you recall, if you were with us last week, that there had just been a transfer of power, and now we have Darius in charge. And when we pick up at chapter 6, it says, "It pleased Darius to set over the kingdom 120 satraps, stationed throughout the whole kingdom, and over them 3 presidents." So we have a hierarchy here. And it says, including Daniel, "To these the satraps gave account, so that the king might suffer no loss. Soon Daniel distinguished himself above all the other presidents and satraps because of an excellent spirit was in him, and the king planned to appoint him over the whole kingdom." So we might be very impressed with what's happening. We're going to pause for just a second here. This is actual, let me clear this off for later. What we just heard about Daniel and the fact that he has kind of risen through the ranks here, and once more, the ruler of the country is impressed with Daniel. This is a theme that we see repeated throughout the Old Testament. Starting in Genesis, we get this with Joseph in Egypt when he becomes second only to Pharaoh. And now, technically, Esther is in the Persian Empire, and so that would be after Daniel, but in the canon, it comes before. So Esther, we have Mordecai, Esther's uncle, and he is in Persia, and he rises into a position of power. And then we have Daniel in Babylon. So there is a running theme. It should bring back, for those that were reading the text, oh, this is something that we've seen before. And we're going to see a variation here. But all of these were God's people who God kind of blessed and gave them a good spirit, or made sure that others were predisposed to liking them and their success. And so we see that repeated. And Daniel is going to be in this same category here, rising up the ranks to be a major political power player working for the ruler, the monarch in charge. All right, so we're going to pick back up here, and chapter 6, verse 4. "So the presidents and the satraps tried to find grounds for complaint against Daniel in connection with the kingdom." So obviously people are jealous and not very happy over the success that Daniel has had. Remember, he's a foreigner. He is not of the Babylonian Empire. He is definitely somebody that has proven himself, but is not one of the native born, and so that upsets the people. "But they could find no grounds for complaint or any corruption because he was faithful, and no negligence or corruption could be found in him. The men said, 'We shall not find any ground for complaint against this Daniel unless we find it in connection with the law of his God.'" So they do see one weakness, and that is his faithfulness to his God. And perhaps there's a place to exploit that there. So they're going to try to take advantage of his commitment. Now remember, biblical Jews, or in this case, they're kind of in that mode of transferring their understanding from the religion of the ancient Israelites into Judaism. As they are in this place, the covenant requires them to do some very specific things. All of those Levitical laws, 613 of them, require them to do things like only eat certain foods or abstain from eating other foods. They can only wear certain fabrics. They can't mix fabrics, mix cloth. They're not allowed to live in certain places and touch certain things. And so there are a lot of parameters that he has to follow. And that's very difficult in a strange land. And so that kind of makes him weak and vulnerable in that sense that it could be exploited because it's obvious the things that he cannot do. So they're going to try to take advantage of that. Verse 6 says, "So the presidents and the satraps conspired and came to the king and said to him, 'O King Darius, live forever.'" You notice everybody opens up with honeyed words to try to cajole the monarch. "All the presidents of the kingdom, the prefects and the satraps, the counselors and the governors are agreed that the king should establish an ordinance and enforce an interdict that whoever prays to anyone, divine or human, for 30 days, except to you, O king, shall be thrown into a den of lions. Now, O king, establish the interdict and sign the document so that it cannot be changed according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, which cannot be revoked.' Therefore, King Darius signed the document and the interdict." So the idea is, for 30 days, you can't worship anybody except the king. Now, this is clearly going to be a problem for a devout Jew or a devout Israelite, because they're not going to worship anybody else but God. And for 30 days, he's not going to go 30 days without worshiping God. He has a Sabbath day that is holy every week. And so this is specifically designed to entrap Daniel. They know that this is not going to be something that he is going to be able to do or that he would want to do. So although Daniel knew that the document had been signed, he continued to go to his house, which had windows in its upper room open toward Jerusalem, and to get down on his knees 3 times a day to pray to his God and praise him, just as he had done previously. So Daniel in exile had developed some religious habits, some things that he was doing as part of his ritualization, so that each day he would still have devotional time. He would come as close to worship as he could, with the temple having been destroyed by the Babylonian Empire. And part of that for him was a prayer schedule. 3 times a day he would go, he would genuflect, get down on his knees. He would pray to God, communicate, and give God praise, just as he had done. So he's developed this habit and this pattern. And you'll notice it says that he does it in an upper room with windows, and he's specifically kind of facing toward Jerusalem. And so there are a number of world religions that have this orientation to prayer life. Modern day Muslims have the same thing. They are supposed to face toward Mecca wherever they are, and it comes partially from this idea of facing toward Jerusalem. So here we have the fact that at verse 11, the conspirators came and found Daniel praying and seeking mercy before his God. Then they approached the king and said concerning the interdict, "O king, did you not sign an interdict that anyone who prays to anyone, divine or human, within 30 days, except to you, O king, shall be thrown into a den of lions?" The king answered, "The thing stands fast, according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, which cannot be revoked." Then they responded to the king, "Daniel, one of the exiles from Judah, pays no attention to you, O king, or to the interdict that you have signed, but he is saying his prayers 3 times a day." When the king heard the charge, he was very much distressed. I think this is important, that the king realizes that he's in a bad position. This is very similar to the position that we see in the book of Esther, when Esther is going to plead to her husband, the king, that a previously signed ruling about killing all of the Jews can be overturned. And he says, "I can't undo it." And so Mordecai will use his mental powers to figure out a way to combat it. However, this is a similar theme here that we're seeing, that the king recognizes that because of the law, you can't undo the law. And how do we do this? It says he was determined to save Daniel, and until the sun went down, he made every effort to rescue him. So clearly the king still is favorable toward Daniel, and he doesn't want to cause Daniel harm. Then the conspirators came to the king and said to him, "Know, O king, that it is a law of the Medes and the Persians that no interdict or ordinance that the king establishes can be changed." So it's kind of an infallibility of law. This is something we also see currently in the Roman Catholic Church. What a pope says concerning church law and doctrine is infallible. And that's kind of the same thing that you're seeing here. So one pope can't come and contradict another pope. They're supposed to be in unity and in unison. It says then the king gave the command, and Daniel was brought and thrown into a den of lions. So this is a story that some of us may have heard. It's ironically a story that we tell children. We don't give them all the background, obviously, but we talk about Daniel in the lion's den. And here you go. The king said to Daniel, "May your God, whom you faithfully serve, deliver you." So the king is hoping that this will go well for Daniel. A stone was brought and laid on the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet and with the signet of his lords, so that nothing might be changed concerning Daniel. So they've rolled a large stone in front of the den so that Daniel can't escape, or so that nobody can come in and try to protect Daniel. And they've sealed it with the king's ring, kind of putting a seal, a barrier on there. And then it says, then the king went to his palace and spent the night fasting. No food was brought to him, and sleep fled from him. So he's clearly upset. He's emotional. He can't eat. He can't sleep. He's concerned about Daniel. Verse 19 says, then at the break of day, so as the sun is rising, the king got up and hurried to the den of lions. When he came near the den where Daniel was, he cried out anxiously to Daniel, "O Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you faithfully serve, been able to deliver you from the lions?" Daniel then said to the king, "O king, live forever. My God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths so that they would not hurt me, because I was found blameless before before him and also before you, O king. I have done no wrong. Daniel's like, I didn't do anything to deserve this. And so God did protect me, sent an angel, and the lions did not eat me. Then the king was exceedingly glad and commanded that Daniel be taken up out of the den. So Daniel was taken up out of the den, and no kind of harm was found on him, because he had trusted in his God. So again, we have this faithfulness that Daniel believed that God would take care of him. God did, and the text accounts for that. Verse 24 says, the king gave a command, and those who had accused Daniel were brought and thrown into the den of lions. There's a lot of turnabout as fair play in the Old Testament. And so here, you wanted him into a den of lions? Here, you try it. See how you like it. Their children, and their wives. Okay, so when I said turnabout, it's usually like turnabout and vengeance. I'm going to erase this because we've covered this. So this is a theme that we find in the Psalms. This is also something that I think we find in human nature and human history. The idea that, let's draw my very detailed people here, okay? So you have person A and person B. Person A is in a relationship with person B. Person A hurts person B, which causes a problem here. And then what we would see in our Christendom and in our understanding of grace is that person A would then go to person B and say, I'm sorry, and I regret that I have caused you hurt, pain, suffering, whatever has happened. And then person B would offer the forgiveness for that. And then that would reestablish the connection. This is what reconciliation looks like. And then sometimes it might go the other way. So that person B hurt person A, and then you would change around and do that. But sometimes what we find instead, this is optimal. Here's what we really find. Person A, my OCD kicked in. Person A hurts person B, severing the relationship. And instead of asking for forgiveness, person B decides to hurt person A twice as much. You should have to give me back what you've done, or you should have to suffer more than I have suffered. It's not about reconciliation as much as it is vengeance, revenge. It's about making them feel exactly what I felt and more. It's punitive. And I think there's a natural human inclination to this. If you don't believe me, hang around with some 18 months old. They will certainly show you what vengeance and retribution can look like. You stole my toy, I'm going to take it back and hit you or bite you. They're happy to show you in a very real way what that looks like. Unfortunately, that is something that a lot of people have to learn to rein in, not going above and beyond. That's why God repeatedly says throughout the Old Testament specifically, vengeance is mine, stop seeking it, because I know when to draw the line. I know when to stop. People are unable to kind of draw that line and go, it's enough. They will keep pursuing until there's nothing left if we don't stop, if we don't put an end to how far you can go, putting limits. And so when we're looking at relationships here, what you see in the text is, we'll get a little bit more. All right, so you've got Daniel over here, and you've got random counselor over here. So it's not just him, it's also his wife and his kids, and that's a horrible thing. I don't think there's a Christian out here that thinks like, oh, that sounds great. What did the wife and the kids do? Nothing. But from the biblical standpoint, and from the people in Mesopotamia and in the Middle East at this time, there's an understanding that your future is here. Your future is here. And if your children are stamped out, then your name and your legacy dies. Because they didn't all have an understanding of eternal life like we do in Christendom. And so instead, you lived eternally through your children. And this is a concept that we see early on in the Bible, too. That's why it's so important to have sons, so that they can have more children and that you can go on. That's why we have those big genealogies of people in the scriptures. The reason why the wife becomes a problem is that there is, for instance, in Levite marriage, which is something that we see in the book of Leviticus, and that's lived out in other places in the Old Testament, is that if he was dead, then he would have a male relative that would marry her, and then their first child would technically be considered his child. and then this child would inherit everything here. So by eliminating the wife and the children, you have eliminated the entire legacy. The family is destroyed, which is horrible. I don't think that that's a great thing at all. And it's certainly not something Daniel's asking for. This is something, of course, that the king has dreamed up. And so let's see what happens. So now, unfortunately, the counselors, the innocent wives, the innocent children, they're all now guilty by association, and they've been put inside the lion's den. It says, they gave the command for those that had cursed David were brought and thrown into the den of lions. Before they reached the bottom of the den, the lions overpowered them and broke all their bones into pieces. I believe this is hyperbole, but the message is that they're dead and they are gone. Lions don't necessarily break all your bones into pieces, but they will definitely rip your flesh from your bones. And here they were just utterly destroyed. The message is they were utterly destroyed. And then at verse 25, then King Darius wrote to all peoples and nations of every language throughout the whole world. And again, the whole world back then was the entire territory of what was Babylon and now is becoming Persia. May you have abundant prosperity. I make a decree that in all my royal dominion, people should tremble and fear before the God of Daniel. For he is the living God, enduring forever. His kingdom shall never be destroyed, and his dominion has no end. He delivers and rescues. He works signs and wonders in heaven and on earth. For he has saved Daniel from the power of the lions. And hopefully, in your text, it looks more like it's not the same justification. The words here are different because this is actually a piece of a song. This is a little bit of a doxology, praising God. Well, it's not quite a doxology because it is talking about what God did for Daniel, but it's talking about how great God is and praising God. And then what we end up seeing is, do we really believe that this king did this? So again, Daniel is a great place for us to wrestle both together and independently about what we've talked about previously. And it never goes away, and it's really important for the New Testament. So we're going to lay it out here, right? You have what we call, or what people seek is objective truth, right? These are things that you can quantify. These are things that you can maybe verify that don't rely upon a person's witnessing. It's independent of personal experience. The truth, which is really hard to find, but the truth. And then you have over here what we call spiritual truth. And one of the examples that I give for this is that Jesus told stories. We call them parables. And so in the parables, are they literally true? Is Jesus walking along and there's literally two guys in the field and then one is plucked up? No, it's a parable and Jesus is telling a story. However, there is real spiritual truth in that story. Even if it's not literally true, it has spiritual truth, and the scriptures are the same way. That's why in the United Methodist Church, as I've said before, we believe in inspired scripture, so that even if every word isn't literally true, there's spiritual truth to be gained here. And so I hope that we really didn't literally kill entire families, or that they weren't literally broken into little bits, but that instead what we're trying to learn here is that God is protecting God's people, that God is faithful to those that are faithful. Did the king of now the Persian Empire really make praises and demand that everybody should worship God or Yahweh in the Old Testament? Probably not. We don't have any independent verification. We don't have any objective or confirmation archaeologically from other empires that is true. In fact, this king that's been named is probably not accurate. There's no accuracy outside of the biblical testimony that this is actually the king. The king that comes into power in the Persian Empire and overpowers Babylon is Cyrus of Persia. And then he does later on have a descendant named Darius who will help the people come back and build their temple. But he's not the one that overthrows. So there's a little bit of a problem in their transference of power. It's not necessarily objectively true. Is there spiritual truth? Yes, because they're trying to tell you a different story. The Bible is not really concerned about being factually accurate. The Bible is concerned with telling a narrative about God and God's people. That's the main thrust of the Bible, trying to give spiritual truth to these people about who they are, what they're supposed to be, and where they've been so that they can learn and not do that again. Unfortunately, a lot of the stuff we read in the Old Testament, we're still doing. And that's where we need to read our Bibles more. So this is going to be constantly something that we wrestle with. And what you have to determine, each individual person that is reading the scriptures, unless you're in a fundamentalist faith, which United Methodism is not, you have to figure, because in a fundamentalist faith, this is not an option. Everything must be objectively true in the Bible. In inspired traditions, like the Methodist Church, then you have room for both. There might be some things that are absolutely objective and literal truths, and then there are things that are spiritual truths, and sometimes they're both. So what we have to wrestle with is this literally true, or is there some spiritual truth I'm supposed to gain from this? And sometimes when we read something that is really difficult and disturbing, it might be because it's spiritual truth, or it might be objective truth. And so this is where we have to do a little bit of work here. And the great thing about Methodism is that there's room for both of these. You could be in a conversation with somebody in a Bible study, and somebody might say, this is literally true. And somebody might say, well, I don't know that it's literally true. Maybe there's some basis to it, but there's definitely spiritual truth here. And both of those are allowed to exist here. We allow for diversity, which is one of the great parts about studying the Bible in the United Methodist Church. So we're going to pick up at verse 28. So this Daniel prospered during the reign of Darius and the reign of Cyrus the Persian. So you see they've kind of flipped them. They've gotten them backwards here. All right, so we are going to shift then to chapter 7. In the first year of King Belshazzar of Babylon, and we had Belshazzar back in chapter 5. So we seem to be going slightly out of order. So we're going to come back here and say, in the first year of King Belshazzar of Babylon, back to Babylon, out of Persia, Daniel had a dream and visions of his head as he lay down in bed. So you might be going, why are we bouncing weird? Because what we're about to shift into in the book of Daniel is the apocalyptic literature. So if you remember, if you've been with us for longer than today or a couple days, then we have been kind of on this journey through apocalyptic literature. One of the things that we jumped to was the book of Revelation, because so many people were using apocalyptic language. You could find it in the news reports. And so we wanted to see, well, what is that all about? So we read Revelation, then we skipped back one to Jude, which is an apocalyptic, really short book in the New Testament. And then we decided to go to the Old Testament with Daniel, and here we are, and we're about to get to the apocalyptic literature. And again, the apocalypse is the end of human days, end of human history. What happens at the end of the world? And there are a lot of different accounts of that in the Bible. They don't all perfectly, seamlessly mesh. They don't all have this feeling because some of them are a little disjointed, but there's certainly something here that we're going to try to figure out. And unfortunately, one of the most difficult things about apocalyptic literature is that it's going to use a lot of metaphor, it's going to have a lot of disturbing imagery, and it's going to be recounting visions. And visions could be dreams, it could be an experience, an esoteric kind of experience. It could be a physical experience that someone has. There's all kinds of different versions in the Bible and in the tradition of the church. And what we find is that they are meant to convey God's will, God's truth. They are definitely meant to have an impact upon the person that is experiencing them. And then generally that person is then tasked with sharing what they have experienced and the insight that they have gained, or the message that has been directly given to them, which is why John of Patmos wrote the book of Revelation, which is why Jude wrote his piece in his book. And then we're about to see what Daniel had. So I just want to give you a warning. Things are going to get a little weird here. So Daniel had a dream and visions in his head as he lay in bed. So you remember when I was pointing back to, in Genesis, Joseph had risen like Daniel. Joseph also had dreams and could interpret dreams. Dreams and Joseph go hand in hand. And so we're seeing that theme continued here in Daniel. It says, then he wrote down the dreams. So he would wake up and write down his dreams, kept a little dream journal. I, Daniel, saw in my vision by night the four winds of heaven stirring up the great sea. And the four great beasts came up out of the sea, different from one another. Okay, we're going to get a little dry here. So when you hear the four winds, it's not the four corners, that's a later thing. These weren't people that believed that the earth was like flat like a piece of paper. That wasn't their understanding of how the cosmos worked. But what you end up getting is, so you have like mountains, and then you have craggy things, and then you have water, because they could see water around there. And then you have the dome of the sky, and they know they have stars up here. And they also believe that there's water up here because it rains, so they think there's water up here too. That's why in Genesis, God creates a dome and separates the waters. It's because there's water up there that rains. They didn't quite understand condensation, all that. But anyway, so there's water down here. All right, and they haven't quite worked out the shape of this. So from the four corners means that from the entire, everywhere. It covers the entire globe. So if you were to talk about the four winds, north, south, east, west, it's covering everywhere. So there's this great convergence that we're hearing about. And that's where we're starting. Everything is kind of coming. Oh, and then you get these beasts coming up. And so we're going to get, so we've got four winds. And that would be north, south, east, and west. And then we're going to get four beasts. Okay. This is where you can draw along. Or just take notes, whatever your comfort level is. Okay, so the four beasts. We are going to get, the first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. Lion with wings. Okay, and then it says, and then I watched, its wings were plucked off, and it was lifted up from the ground and made to stand on 2 feet like a human being. So I guess I could draw this, why not? All right, I can do my little weird lion for you. Mane, right, it's got ears, it's got paws. You can tell I don't draw lions a lot. Okay, so and then it had wings. Okay, so it had wings, then the wings are cut off, and then this becomes kind of a standing thing. All right, so we're seeing kind of a metamorphosis or a transformation occurring here, and all of a sudden, it's much more humanoid. Notice it didn't say that it was made into a human, but it's more humanoid. So now we've kind of gone into this, so there could still be a mane, who knows, or a tail, a little tail. Okay. So you've got that one, and it says, it made to stand on 2 feet like a human being, and a human mind was given to it. So the biggest transformation happens in here, right? We get a human mind. Okay. And remember, lions are a huge symbol in the scriptures. Judah is like a lion. That's part of the blessing that Jacob, who becomes Israel, gives to his son Judah. And so lions have a strong history there. They're also known as, the top-ranking predator in that part of the world. So a lion was a big import, as was an eagle. Eagles were very impressive, and they were top of the food chain here. So the fact that we've lost the wings, but we've kind of taken the lion, so the fierceness, the mightiness of the king, and then we've imparted this, actually this should probably go this way. We've imparted a human mind. Okay. It says, then another beast appeared, a second one, and that one looked like a bear. All right, so now I'm going to erase this. Okay. All right, so now we have a bear, which of course they do have. There's the two very infamous bears, the she-bears that come out. The prophet Elisha calls them, and it comes and mauls these 42 young men that are bullying him. So we have a bear, but not like, again, it's hard for us as people in this context, in this country, in Northern America. This is not like a grizzly bear. This is a different bear from a different part of the world. But it says it appeared, the second one, it looked like a bear. It was raised up on one side and had 3 tusks in its mouth among its teeth. So again, you're starting to see bizarre visions, right? Lions with wings come off, then starts to walk like a human being. And now we have a bear that's got tusks, 3 tusks in with the teeth. Bears don't have tusks. They have big teeth, but they don't have tusks. So again, these are not normal things. That's part of how you distinguish a vision from a memory, right? It is supposed to be a little bizarre so that it triggers in you, this is different. This is not what I've experienced before. So the oddity of it is a good thing in this case. And it was told, arise and devour many bodies. So it's been given permission to kill and eat people. After this, I watched another appeared like a leopard. Like a leopard. And of course, we're another big cat we have here. The beast had 4 wings of a bird on its back and 4 heads. Okay, so it's not a normal leopard. So you've got multiple heads again. And we're seeing, okay, so we had 2 legs here, 3 tusks, 4 heads. Okay, just making note. And then the 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. Okay, so somehow they have necks, and then they have legs and talons. And nobody has time for me to draw lots and lots of leopard spots, but you know what leopards look like. Okay. And so we have a multi-headed leopard, which obviously does not exist. But you can see we're doing a little bit of numerology here thus far. And this one also had 4 wings. So this could be like 2 sets of wings, which is very possible. Angel depictions in the Old Testament and in the book of Revelation have multiple pairs of wings, not just the ones that we see kind of Hallmark style on the back. So it's quite possible this is 2 pairs, so it'd make the 4. And of course, this one was given dominion. Dominion is power over, right? This is something that God first gave to human beings in the book of Genesis, right? I give you dominion over these things. And of course, you can abuse dominion. You can either look at dominion as stewardship or dominion as like control. And this is probably more of the second. So we have our leopard here, and then it says at verse 7, after this I saw in the visions by night a 4th beast, terrifying and dreadful, exceedingly strong. So the 4th is supposed to be worse than the first 3, which are pretty bizarre. And it says it had great iron teeth and was devouring, breaking in pieces, and stamping what was left with its feet. So whatever is left after the lion, the bear, and the leopard, whatever is left is now this 4th beast. Okay, with iron teeth. Okay. And it doesn't have a number here. Okay, it was different from all the beasts that preceded it, and it had 10 horns. So we get the 10. Okay. I don't really have a beast shape here. So you could make it like a bear, make it like a lion, make it like a big cat, however you want to make it. And again, you've got the 10 horns, right? Lots of horns on there. I was considering the horns when another horn appeared. +1. A little one coming up among them. To make room for it, 3 of the earlier horns were plucked up by the roots. Right? We're doing math here. There were eyes like human eyes in this horn. So now the horn has eyes. And a mouth speaking arrogantly. It's got like a little face on it. And here's now, it should shift in your text as well, out of the narrative form. As I watched, thrones were set in place, and an ancient one, some of you may have Ancient of Days, an ancient one took his throne. His clothing was white as snow, and the hair of his head like pure wool. His throne was fiery flames, and its wheels were burning fire. So there's a depiction. I'm going to erase my crazy leopard. So you've got kind of a throne situation here. Okay, and you see this in Ezekiel, and you see this in the book of Revelation, this idea that there are wheels somehow. It's not a wheelchair per se, but it's mobile. It doesn't have to stay in one place, hence the wheels. And apparently it's very fiery. I don't know how to draw that. Fiery. Probably would have helped to draw it in red. Okay. And this idea that A stream of fire issued and flowed from the presence of the one on the throne. 1,000 thousands served him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood attending him. Has a vast kind of army around him, a huge host of people gathered, or those that are serving him. The court sat in judgment, and the books were open. So this is alluding to Judgment Day, which is something that existed in the time of Daniel. It's later on with Jesus that Judgment Day also becomes the day of resurrection and a day of reunion for all of those that have died that then get to enter into the kingdom to come. Right now, Judgment Day is kind of scary, which you can see why is a little bit terrifying. Oh, here. Hold on. That would probably help if I didn't use my finger. I apologize for that. So we end up getting 8. So we're total at 8 here. So 2, 3, 4, and 8, because we had 10 plus 1 minus 3, 8. Is my math correct? I come from a tradition where 1 plus 1 plus 1 is 1. So the Trinity is not good math. Okay, so we are seeing numerology, and now we're getting into visions about Judgment Day, and it's issuing judgment. And notice it says something about books, right? So this is the idea that when you die, that there's a book of life. Jesus will kind of reference this as referenced by some of the prophetic visions, the idea of a book of life, and that your name has to be written in there in order for you to come in, or there's a book of judgment, book of the dead that are going to stay dead. And so books are going to be opened, and all these people are going to be judged. So verse 11 says, I watched then because of the noise of the arrogant words that the horn was speaking. And as I watched, the beast was put to death, and its body destroyed and given over to be burned with fire. So this is now destroyed. As for the rest of the beasts, their dominion was taken away, but their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. So dominion, and the one that was able to kill and devour many bodies, these were allowed to continue. Okay, they're still able to cause pain and suffering there. And it says, and verse 13, as I watched in the night visions, I saw one like a human being coming with the clouds of heaven, and he came to the Ancient One, the one on the throne, and was presented before him. So now we see something like a human being. Some of you may have like a son of man, okay, which is another translation in Aramaic, a human being or a son of man, a human being, a person, came to the Ancient One and was presented before him. To him was given dominion and glory and kingship, that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him, so the one that comes. His dominion is an everlasting dominion that shall not pass away, and his kingship is one that shall never be destroyed. Is this starting to sound familiar? As Christians, this should start to remind us of somebody, but we have to be careful about reading Christianity back into here, because remember, this was given to a people that didn't understand messianic prophecy or Jesus. They didn't understand that. They didn't have Jesus, different thing. So even though this is reminding us of Jesus, we're going to try to read it and figure out what's going on here. And his kingdom shall never be destroyed. As for me, Daniel, my spirit was troubled within me, and the visions of my head terrified me. Again, it's meant to be jarring and disturbing so that 1, he'll remember, 2, he'll pay attention, and 3, he'll recognize that this isn't a bad dream because he ate some bad fish. This is a vision. This is really supposed to be memorable and to draw his full attention, and apparently it's working. He's terrified. And it says at verse 16, I approached one of the attendants to ask him the truth concerning all of this. So remember, there were 1,000 serving him and 10,000 times 10,000 attending him. So he approaches one of the 10,000 times 10,000 who is attending him. And it says that so that he would disclose to me the interpretation. So Daniel is looking for clarity. What does this mean? So in his dream, he approaches one of the people to ask, what is going on? As for these 4 great beasts, 4 kings shall arise out of the earth, but the holy ones of the Most High shall receive the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, forever and ever. Then I desired to know the truth concerning the 4th beast, which was different from the rest, right? Because these were all perversions of the animal kingdom. This one here. The fourth beast, which was different from all the rest, exceedingly terrifying, with its teeth of iron and claws of bronze, which we didn't have before, but now we have claws of bronze, which was devoured and broken to pieces and stamped what was left with his feet. And concerning the 10 horns that were on its head, and concerning the other horn, which came up, and to make room for the 3 which fell out, the horn that had eyes and a mouth and spoke arrogantly, that seemed greater than the others. So Daniel's like, okay, I think I can get past this. What is going on here? I need more information about this. Notice that nobody's like, and you shouldn't ask questions. It's great. He's asked questions, and he's getting some clarity. And never be afraid to ask questions. And as I looked, this horn made war with the holy ones and was prevailing over them until the Ancient One came. Then judgment was given for the holy ones of the Most High, and the time arrived when the holy ones gained possession of the kingdom. This is what he said. As for the fourth beast, there shall be a fourth kingdom on earth that shall be different from all the other kingdoms. It shall devour the whole earth and trample it down and break it to pieces. As for the 10 horns, out of this kingdom 10 kings shall arise, and another shall rise after them. This one shall be different from the former ones, and shall put down 3 kings. There's a lot of regicide in monarchs that go on along. So this, a lot of killing your competition, or killing somebody and taking the throne, or killing off those that would be king. You're hearing kind of that sick willingness to murder in order to keep power. That's kind of what you're getting here. And shall be different from the, put down the 3 kings. Verse 25 says, he shall speak words against the Most High, which never goes well. Shall wear out the holy ones of the Most High, and shall attempt to change the sacred seasons and the law. Think they have dominion over how we think of time. Right? How do you do that? And it says, and they shall be given into his power for a time, 2 times and a half time. There will be a season and then another season, or a partial season of that. At verse 26, it says, then the court shall sit in judgment, and his dominion will be taken away, to be consumed and totally destroyed. The kingship and the dominion and the greatness of the kingdoms under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the holy ones of the Most High. So they will get to reclaim the kingship, the monarchy, and the control over the greatness of the kingdoms. Their kingdom shall be an everlasting kingdom, and all the dominions shall serve and obey them. So it's a new world order here. Here the account ends. As for me, Daniel, my thoughts greatly terrified me, and my face turned pale, but I kept the matter in my mind. So he continued to kind of ruminate and think about this. So we end up getting this description, a kind of a foretelling. Is it prophetic literalism? Is it prophetic spiritual truth? Is it prophetic foreshadowing? What are we getting here? A time when a kingdom will override the other kingdoms and will change time. This is literally something the Greco-Roman Empire does. They switched to a solar calendar. And before then, Judaism was on a lunar calendar. And their day began with sundown. And because if you go back to the book of Genesis and the first creation story, it says there was evening and there was morning. The first day, the second day, third day, fourth day, fifth day, sixth day. It starts with evening and then goes to morning. They're on a lunar cycle, which keeps time differently than a solar cycle, which is why sometimes year variances happen in societies that are on lunar calendars, like Islam. You have different variations, which is why if you pay attention to when like Yom Kippur is or when Ramadan comes, you'll notice that those kind of shift a little bit. And you find that this is kind of rebelling against that. There's an idea here that what kind of arrogance do you have for thinking that you can move time, which is something I rail about every time we have daylight savings time. Why are we moving time? It always happens on a Sunday, and it always affects church. So you have either a looking back prophecy that is saying, look what people did and how bad it was, or this is a forward-looking prophecy. And what I mean by that is that sometimes accounts are written to kind of explain what happens, what our experiences are. The other option is that God said, you need to have an idea that this is coming, that this is going to happen. And you need to be aware, and then, you need to recognize that people are going to try to persecute you, but ultimately, I'm going to triumph here. So you have plenty of things to kind of terrify you and capture your mind, which is what Daniel testifies to in the first vision, that this is a scary thing. And this is the four winds, the four beasts. You've got a lot of numerology kind of happening here. And then there's a mystical form of Judaism known as Kabbalah, not what Madonna practiced, different thing. Literal Kabbalah is not practiced by women. It's a mysticism for men in Orthodox Judaism, and it's a subset. And they would try to use these numbers to figure out like holy truth. Sometimes numbers are important. Sometimes numbers are just numbers. You have to try to figure out what they are. Obviously, the four winds, as we said before, is trying to cover the entire expanse of the earth. Four beasts, four seasons, four winds. You've got that happening here, the four time periods of them. And then this year, 8 is not usually a biblical number. 7 is a number that we talk about. 12 is a number that we talk about. 40. 8 could just be happenstance. You could be trying to figure out how to make that work. So again, you look at it, and numbers that we see repeatedly, like again, 7, 12, 40, those are usually significant numbers. Even if they're not literally true, there's a significance to those. Sometimes 3 is just 3. They don't have the Trinity yet, so they don't understand that. You can't have that concept with that. But I think, as Christians, we're like, ooh, 3, that's a good number. It's a good number for us, but you can't put that back there. They don't have that concept. That would be meaningless to them. So here, again, you're trying to make sense of what's happening here. And obviously, there's going to come a time when somebody who has mastered ironworks is going to be ruling, probably a very military-based country, nation, and God's people are going to suffer for that. And remember, at this time, their only concept of God's people are Israelites who are in the process of becoming Jews. That's their concept of God's people. In Christendom, we have a different concept of that. We think of ourselves as having inherited, being adopted in, as the Apostle Paul would say. But we also have a kind of a bigger worldview that all people are God's children. Somehow, some way, God made all of them. God thinks about all of them, knows all of them, and there are certainly scriptures to support that. So, again, you try to read on two different levels the Old Testament when you're a Christian. You try to read as a Christian, and then you try to figure out what was going on in the original text to the people that received it. Most people don't write something down that they have no idea what it means, and they're like, well, maybe somebody 2,000 years from now, we'll make sense of that. So that's not usually how that works. Instead, this had to have some meaning for them. And the fact that it was preserved over time meant that it had some meaning for the people that were descended from the people of Daniel. So we're going to continue to look at that. We're going to go on to, we'll start chapter 8. So let me erase this because got to start new. That concludes that first vision. And if you went through Revelation for us, you're like, that's actually kind of tame. I had to draw some really wild stuff in Revelation. That is definitely more tame. It gets crazier the further in the scriptures we go. Okay, in the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision appeared to me, Daniel. So the first one, I think, was the first year. Maybe make sure that. Yes, the first year. So for over 2 years, Daniel is ruminating on this, meditating on it, wrestling with it. And then in year 3, here we go again. After that one had appeared to me at first. In the vision, I was looking and saw myself in Susa, the capital in the province of Elam. Or some of you might have, it switched a little bit to like the vision I was looking at. But it says, and I was by the river Ulai. I looked up and saw a ram standing beside a river, and it had 2 horns. Both horns were long, but one was longer than the other, and the longer one came up second. I saw the ram charging westward, northward, and southward, this way. All beasts were powerless to withstand it, and no one could rescue from its power. It did as it pleased and became strong. So it already clearly has some strength, and then it grows stronger over time. So you're picturing a ram, a male sheep. It's got horns, but these horns are bizarre. It's got the 2 horns, and they're long, but one's even longer. It's like bizarrely long. And it says that the ram is kind of using that and charging, and it's showing power and control. Notice that it's not eastward, interesting, westward, north, south. And as I was watching, a male goat appeared. Sheep and goats are prolific in the Bible, appeared from the west, coming across the face of the whole earth without touching the ground. It's like a hovering goat. It is not touching the ground, but somehow it's traveling. It's traversing. The goat had a horn between its eyes. It came toward the ram with the two horns that I had seen standing beside the river, and it ran at it with savage force. See, this is where it's kind of fun to draw these things. Okay, so so you've got, think of how I want to draw this. So you got a little goat over here. It's got little goat eaters. And this one, in between its eyes, has a horn. This is kind of like a unicorn. They don't have unicorns in Scripture. I wish they did. They don't. That's a medieval thing. Okay, and then you've got your little hooves here. You've got your little hooves. Your little goat tail. Okay, your little goat here. And then over here, you've got your really weird ram with your big longhorn. It's like a Texas longhorn. Okay, and then you've got, he's woolly. Cottontail. Okay, and they're coming at each other, so we're headed for a collision. Okay, and it says, as I was watching, the goat appeared, and it's coming towards them. I had seen them standing beside the river, and it ran at it with savage force. I saw it approaching the ram. It was enraged against it and struck the ram, breaking its two horns. The ram did not have the power to withstand it. So these broken. I threw the ram down to the ground and trampled on it. Ew. And from there, no one who could rescue the ram from its power. And then the goat grew exceedingly great, but at the height of its power, the great horn was broken. And in its place, there came up 4 prominent horns towards the 4 winds of the heavens. So then you end up getting 4 more horns here. I'm going to pause. We're going to stop here. I don't want to get too far into this. So we're going to come back and we'll do this again next week. But this is one of the places where Christendom has gone back in and read some of the later descriptions and portrayals of the devil and got kind of this pan-goat-like form. And you might have seen statues and pictures of Baphomet. And this is one of the kind of the depictions that they use to draw that from. But we've got these mythological beasts that are kind of, again, perversions of creation, and they're battling, and this one was terrorizing everybody, and then this one came and trampled over that one, and now this one's going to be terrorizing everybody. And so because these are perversions of what God created, these are unhealthy visions, right? This is obviously not like a good goat. This is not how we want our rams to be. This would be considered an imperfect ram anyway because the horns are not equal. So when we come back next week, we'll continue to explore this second vision. But hopefully you've heard enough to be intrigued and want to come back and see more. There's a lot more weird stuff to happen in Daniel. And yeah, this is weird. It's supposed to be weird. As I said, if you feel weirded out, you're normal. It's okay. We're going to continue to go through it, and then at the end, we might be able to draw some parallels between what we've read in Daniel and then what we previously read in Jude and Revelation, and then you can see how Daniel might have influenced some of that. And hopefully, that'll help you to make those cross connections throughout Scripture, because Scripture is confluence. It comes together, and it has connections and threads and influence upon other books that come afterwards. And so Daniel is going to be one of those that we're going to get some rich nuggets from that are going to be part of later apocalyptic text. And so thank you for being with us, and I'd love to close this in prayer. Let's pray. Lord, we thank you, not only for your holy text and for the gift of searching the Scriptures in community, the ability to use technology to overcome the isolation and the restrictions of a pandemic, but Lord, we thank you that you are with us in the midst of these trials and these tribulations and this searching. We recognize that sometimes we read your text and we feel so overwhelmingly comforted and hopeful. And other times we read it and we feel disturbed and we feel lost. But let us remember that you are with us, that you send your Spirit upon us, and you help us to remember that we are always loved and that it is okay to ask the questions and get clarification. Lord, just like Daniel, we come looking for your wisdom and your guidance. We hope that you will illuminate for us what you would have us take away from this text for us and for our lives here this day. We recognize that we are reading some of the trials and the tribulations and the struggles and experiences of your people from ages past. But you are the thread that connects all of those. You are a rich connector. And we hope that one day we will produce something that others will be inspired by. That generations from now, future Christians will hear the tales of our missions and our ministries. They will discover the writings and songs and expressions of our faith, and they will find hope, inspiration, and more reason to gather together and search the scriptures as a community. And for this, we find great joy. And we hope that you will bring us all back together. And as we leave this time together, help to keep us safe. Help to give us something to take away and to ruminate on until we come back together and receive even more illumination from you. Thanks be to you, Almighty God. In your holy name we pray. Amen. Thank you so much for joining us. Look forward to seeing you next week.